have to be honest, this is not my father's Rotary Club. And literally, I'm from Natchez. And the Rotary Club there is a lot more like the Kiwanis Club or the Lions Club or the Knights of Columbus. So when Mark and Sherry asked me to come speak about the film industry in Baton Rouge, I assumed this would be something along those lines. When a civic group wants to talk about the movie business in Louisiana, I don't think twice, I just do it. And so while it's an honor to speak to the Baton Rouge Rotary, I didn't fully grasp that it was such a big deal. This week I learned that the Baton Rouge Rotary Club meetings are actually broadcast, that the press often shows up. I guess I didn't realize that you post your speaker's photo on billboards on I-10. Which is how my bosses at LED found out I was speaking here. So suddenly I was hit with, who authorized that? What's he speaking on? Has Communications seen his presentation? Communications did take a look. And we ended up removing a few things that I was going to say. I think they're pretty sore at me. So if I do up getting canned, do me a favor, invite me back, and I'll give you the most epic presentation ever. Now that said, okay, just want to say one more thing. True story. I got a text from somebody from Natchez who saw a glimpse of my photo on the billboard, and they asked me, "Are you in trouble with the law?" Man, I hope not. So there's been a lot of talk in the news lately about Baton Rouge being its own harshest critic, right, Adam? And basically lacking confidence in what we are capable of as a city, maybe. So I want to tell you the best story I know about the subject of confidence. But first, let me see a show of hands. How many of you in here saw Top Gun 2? Great film, me too. In case you didn't know, its director, Joseph Kosinski, made a film with Tom Cruise in Baton Rouge in 2012 called Oblivion. And it was shot at Celtic. And back then there was a sound guy by the name of Michael Russo who used to hang out in front of the O'Connor building there smoking cigarettes. Okay? Does anybody here know Russo? Well, anyway, Russo just kind of went by Russo. Okay, we didn't call him Michael or anything like that. And so just to kind of describe Russo, he was about $125, not the tallest guy in the world. Not that I'm into rating people, but if you saw a picture of him, you might say he's like a 5 or a 6. He basically was held together by tattoo ink, nicotine, and pure confidence, okay? So, again, to put it in perspective of just how confident he was, I mean, I'm telling you, women that were 9s and 10s were constantly chasing after her. And so, again, when I think about it, the story shouldn't surprise me at all. One day, Tom Cruise has to go cut some audio in the O'Connor building, and he walks right by Russo. And Russo's out there smoking a cigarette. And Tom Cruise is kind of, he's power walking. He's always in a hurry. But he sees Russo standing there. He puts out his hand. He goes, "Hey, how you doing? Tom." And so Russo sticks out his hand and kind of takes a drag and goes, "Russo." And Tom Cruise looks at it and he goes, "Those things will kill you." Russo goes, "Thanks, Tom Cruise." But the point of the story was this, is that to this day in the film industry in Louisiana, if somebody says something that's obvious, instead of saying, "Well, thanks, Captain Obvious," they basically say, "Thanks, Tom Cruise." So my hope, though, is that before the day is done, that, there may be a few times where you say, "Thanks, Tom Cruise," I knew that already. But you will leave here with the confidence of Russo, that Baton Rouge is a great city, and it's a great place to make a movie. Okay, all right, let's get into this here. So, how do I do this? Okay, let's try it.
The sound's working.
Oh, great. All right, let's go back in time here. So I got about less than 20 minutes to basically give you 65 years worth of history. So there's no way that we can talk about the dozens of films, all the films that have shot here, but we can talk about some of the highlights. So let's get started with Band of Angels in 1957, starring old Rhett Butler himself, Clark Gable. And then, of course, you had Paul Newman here in town for the first time, Mark, with Joanne Woodward for The Long Hot Summer. That was an Orson Welles film. And I got a question. Does anybody know if Joanne Woodward is Scott Woodward's Meemaw or anything? If not, I don't know. If it is, she deserves a big old hug. He's fantastic. Of course, in 1964, Baton Rouge had Betty Davis eyes for Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte. If there are millennials in here, I apologize. You probably don't get that, that reference. Of course, we had Clint Eastwood here for The Beguiled in 1972. Sounder Shot here. That's considered a classic. The Toy. Heather Kleinpeter was just telling me the other day that, and I loved that movie when I was growing up, but somebody I know got to hang out with Jackie Gleason. I would have loved to hang out with Richard Pryor, but anyway. Of course, we had Everybody's All-American here in 1988, the movie that put Michael Papajohn on the map. Again, that was loosely based on the Billy Cannon story, very loosely based on the Billy Cannon story. And one thing I don't like about it is LSU did not star as LSU, but LSU certainly was a big part of that film. And then we were just discussing Blaze. Paul Newman must have liked Baton Rouge enough that he came back. And I think we were just saying Louis Hertham's brother? Uncle was in Harold. Harold, that's right. So again, you've had some classics here along the way. And then we get to this film right here. I don't know that we fully appreciate just how important this film is as a cinematic milestone. Steven Soderbergh's Sex, Lies, and Videotape has been credited as the birth of modern independent film. It put the Sundance Film Festival on the map and won the prestigious Palme d'Or at Cannes. Now, I'm not saying we should let that go to our heads and start wearing berets and smoking skinny cigarettes or anything, but we should celebrate what Soderbergh was able to do and accomplish right here in Baton Rouge. This is the birthplace of modern independent film. Death penalty has been in the news lately. Dead Man Walking has come up. That was about Sister Helen Prejean. In fact, Susan Sarandon won the Academy Award for her role in that. And then, of course, another Steven Soderbergh film shot here, Out of Sight, with George Clooney. Now, I hate to do this, but I got to do it. I got to tease something. Something is coming to Baton Rouge that George Clooney is involved with. It's not a film. It's not a TV show. It's actually more meaningful. And I can't say anything just yet, but just watch the news because this thing is coming. It's not Nespresso either. I know he tells Nespresso, but George Clooney's involved with something, and we're all going to be really happy about it. Okay, so let's talk about how productions decide where they go. If you go back again, that was in 1998, and then things had kind of really slowed down in Louisiana as we got in the late 90s and as we got towards the early 2000s. The reason for that, before there was Hollywood South, there was Hollywood North. Canada, blame Canada. Canada was taking all the runaway productions out of the U.S. Think back to the days of like the X-Files and some of those shows were shooting. And as a response, Louisiana had to do something about it, and so that's kind of how the incentives were born. And so to this day, they tell you, and going back to then, what they're looking for when they're sending a production somewhere, 3 different things. They call it the 3-legged stool: incentives, infrastructure, and crew. So first, let's talk about incentives. So in 2002, Louisiana and New Mexico were the first 2 states to offer tax incentives for motion picture production. Today, there are more than 38 states and several dozen countries that offer financial incentives to producers. Between 2002 and 2022, Louisiana hosted more than 1,200 qualifying motion pictures. That means films and TV shows that basically had a budget of over $300,000, resulting in certified in-state spending of more than $9.2 billion. And we certified direct Louisiana payroll of more than $2.3 billion. Nothing to sneeze at. Louisiana's film industry supports more than 10,000 jobs and pays average wages over $60,000 per year, which is definitely higher than median household income. Louisiana now issues less than $150 million in tax credits per year, but to put things in perspective, Georgia issued $1.2 billion in film tax credits last year alone. And so the incentive era began in Baton Rouge around 2003. I kind of feel like Georgia's trying to get even with us because one of the first big films we had here was the Ray Charles biopic Ray with Jamie Foxx. I don't know if everybody remembers that shooting around here, but I will say that he sang a song about Georgia. I don't think they like that, and with Baton Rouge doubling as Georgia, I think they wanted to get even. I always put Glory Road up there just because I have a favorite story about it. A good friend of mine is now one of the big execs at Sony. Back then, he was a line producer who came to Baton Rouge, spent a couple of months here, and in just a short period of time, he gained 35 pounds. He may have been eating here, I don't know. But anyway, love the food here. We all got to watch what we eat. But All the King's Men, a lot of y'all remember that shooting at the Capitol with Jude Law, Sean Penn, James Gandolfini, Dukes of Hazzard. Okay, so we all remember Willie Nelson as Uncle Jesse, and do we remember Jessica Simpson as Daisy Duke? Well, this has been in the news recently because she wrote a book which talks a lot about her time in Baton Rouge with Johnny Knoxville. Let's see. Okay, so again, some more highlights. When I first got to Celtic in 2009, this was the first big film that we hosted. That was Battle Los Angeles. Sony film, really kind of the first big production that Baton Rouge had hosted since before Katrina. I think I still have voicemails from neighbors who have been complaining about the noise because that was probably the loudest production in the history of Louisiana. Blew up a lot of stuff off of Airline Highway. It's kind of interesting how similar the poster next to it is, Battleship. Now, Battleship is a big tentpole film for NBC Universal. It probably had a budget about 3 times the size of Battle Los Angeles. Some people refer to it as Transformers on the Water. You see it running all the time on HBO these days. But that was a lot of fun. Pitch Perfect, that was an independent film that didn't shoot at Celtic, but it did quite well. Baton Rouge should be proud of it. It did shoot at LSU. Again, I hold a grudge against it because it didn't star LSU as LSU. But again, it spun a bunch of sequels. Twilight Saga, Breaking Dawn, parts 1 and 2. My goodness. Gosh, I don't want to tell Twilight stories, but I will say that to this day, Celtic still gets rabid fans of the Twilight series showing up wanting to see where it's shot, even though there's no sets or anything like that. Rabid fandom. And of course, we talked about Oblivion. Fantastic Four. Hey, so speaking of Top Gun 2, Miles Teller was here for a long time. When I say a long time, the Fantastic Four actually came to Baton Rouge in September of 2013. They kept rewriting the script and recasting and things, and so it was basically here all of 2014, and it didn't get out of Baton Rouge until May of 2015. So it was kind of the gift that kept on giving for the studio. Of course, it had Michael B. Jordan in it as well. And, 2015 was kind of this watershed year for Baton Rouge. I mean, look at that. We had 3 scripted television series. Happen Leonard was on the Sundance Channel. It was produced by AMC. You had Scream, the TV series, which was on MTV. You had Underground, which was a WGN show that Sony produced. And then, of course, you had The Magnificent Seven. I don't know, did anybody get to see the set that they built for this? It was in East Feliciana Parish, and they built an entire western town. Unfortunately, it's probably like in disrepair now, but it was amazing. I mean, you would have sworn you were in the Old West. And one of the funniest stories I have about that is Chris Pratt, who was in it. This had Denzel Washington, Ed Harris, Chris Pratt. And Chris Pratt, I don't know if you know, he's a big outdoorsman, and between scenes, he liked to go fishing because there was a pond on the property. And in fact, he caught a huge bass, and he posted it on Instagram. And right under it, he put, "I love Louisiana." And I'm thinking, man, you couldn't pay for that kind of free publicity. But here's what happened. The woman who owned the property saw it, and she said, "Look, you tell that Pratt boy I didn't give him permission to fish in my pond. If I catch him again, y'all are out of here." Underground, again, the LSU Rural Life Museum was really kind of the star of that show. And then if you guys remember, we had a bit of a hiccup with the incentive in 2015. Things just kind of shut down. We lost a lot of production back then. Obviously we had the flood after that. So, thankfully in 2017, Governor Edwards and the legislature were able to fix that, and obviously we were able to kind of bounce back from the crew to the point where we were able to host a really fantastic film in 2018 called Greyhound. How's anybody seen that one? Okay, so that's on Apple TV. If you'll remember, that came out during the pandemic. And not only that, it came out on Father's Day. So a lot of people got together with Dad and watched Greyhound, to the point that Apple TV subscriptions went up by 30% by that, for about one movie alone. So don't be surprised if we see a sequel one of these days. So, the USS Kid has never looked so good. Crater. Crater was here for much of 2021 at Celtic. If I'm not mistaken, it is actually coming out on Disney Plus in less than a month, so you will be able to see that one really soon. Of course, National Treasure, a scripted TV series. I mean, I love it because Baton Rouge actually stars as Baton Rouge. I think the entire series has now been released. Am I right, Adam? Is the whole thing out? Yeah, so you can watch the entire thing. You can binge watch it tonight if you want to. And I had to include this one last year, My Southern Family Christmas. Mark knows a little bit about this film. Again, not a huge movie by any means, but do any of you ladies like Hallmark movies? I know my mom's and my sisters love it. My gosh. I will say this. Daniel Lewis is probably the king of making Christmas movies or holiday movies for the Hallmark Channel. He is from Baton Rouge, an LSU grad. He's got a formula down that the Hallmark just loves. And that one came out on Thanksgiving night, if I'm not mistaken. And they started shooting it in like September, October. I mean, they can turn those things around pretty fast. But anyway, a great thing that our Baton Rouge boy did. Let's see. All right, infrastructure. I mean, okay, you hit the jackpot with this one, ladies and gentlemen. Again, as one of the legs of your stool, you have the largest design-build studio in the Gulf South. You have to go as far east as Atlanta to find a larger studio facility like this. You have to go as far west as Albuquerque. So we've got that part down. I mean, it's funny because I've been saying that for over 10 years now, but it's still true. A couple of things about the infrastructure, too, that's fantastic. One, Crafty Apes Visual Effects. And I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Crafty Apes, but they are based out of Celtic now. I mean, they've done everything from like Stranger Things to The Walking Dead to the Marvel movies. If you saw Last of Us on HBO, I know they did that. But listen to a list of like the other cities where they're located. They're in LA, they're in London, they're in New York, they're in Atlanta, they're in Albuquerque, Montreal, Vancouver, and Baton Rouge. And I'm told that Baton Rouge is actually one of the more profitable operations. They have dozens of artists. Most of them are making six figures. Getting them here was a huge win for LED in Baton Rouge. So anyway, if you're watching the credits sometime, look for Crafty Apes Visual Effects. It might very well have been done here in Baton Rouge. I'm going to go ahead and throw this as part of infrastructure. Oh, wait, let me go back to Celtic one bit. You need to get the new me to come speak to the Rotary. I don't know if you've met Kevin O'Neill, but Kevin O'Neill is the new head of Celtic. He's a great friend of mine. He is one of the most talented assistant directors that we've had in Louisiana. He's from California, and it's kind of like the real secret of how we get talent here. And Adam, we should talk about like how do we have some mixers, because anyway, he married a Louisiana girl, and actually he is about to increase the population of Baton Rouge by one. They have a baby due on May the 6th, 2 days after my birthday. So anyway, but Kevin is fantastic. He's just so funny, so smart, and a true production pro, so we're lucky to have him there. But I also wanted to include the Baton Rouge Film Commission as part of infrastructure. That is something that they look for wherever they go, because again, you need somebody to help you out with logistics. We are very blessed to have Katie Pryor and Nathan Hall here. I mean, they are so fantastic. I can't tell you enough. But anyway, I would consider them part of the infrastructure. Okay, let's see here. Oh, yes, one more piece of our stool here. And there are some important rules. Rule number 1, the crew goes where the work is. Rule number 2, the crew goes where the crew follows the work. Rule number 2, the crew follows the work. The work follows the crew. And crew will actually buy homes and plant roots where they ever stay consistently busy. And so that's kind of the key, is to keep Baton Rouge consistently busy so we can grow our crew base. And speaking of crew, my goodness, I will tell you that we have some of the best crew in the world in Louisiana. And I know this, here's the proof. We had 6 films nominated for Best Picture in a span of 6 years. Beast of the Southern Wild, Django Unchained, Dallas Buyers Club, 12 Years a Slave, The Big Short, and Green Book. 2 of those films actually won Best Picture, that being 12 Years a Slave and Green Book. And so, speaking of crew, and speaking of the jobs of the future, I gotta tell you, if you haven't seen this at LSU, you need to see if there's a way you can get a field trip, because this is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. The virtual production stage, which became so big during the pandemic, but I mean, I'm telling you, it's something that is here to stay. These are the jobs of the next 30 years. Did you have kids that play Fortnite? You know what I'm talking about? Okay. So it's the same Unreal game engine technology in Fortnite. It's the same that they use on the show Mandalorian that's on Disney+. I mean, basically, you can create virtual worlds, and you can put actors and actresses anywhere, I mean, outer space, you name it, and you can't tell the difference. It looks so real. And we have kids at LSU who are learning this right now. LSU is one of only a handful of universities in the U.S. That is offering this. So it's true bragging rights. I'm super proud of everybody who's been involved with getting that off the ground. Those are the jobs of tomorrow. And so, I don't know if we brought popcorn, but it's movie time.
Louisiana's entertainment industry is thriving. Demand is surging for skilled creatives and production professionals that work in front of the camera as well as behind the scenes.
I don't think people realize how many people from Louisiana work in the film industry.
The movie industry has gone around the state. We're in Shreveport, we're in Alexandria, we're in Lafayette.
Great directors like David Fincher and Tony Scott have come in and rewritten entire scripts to fit the state of Louisiana because they give more authenticity.
With the explosion of streaming, the demand for the jobs is here to stay.
And in Louisiana, entertainment jobs are more than just gigs. They're full-time careers. Established in 2017, the Entertainment Development Fund provides critical state support to education and workforce development initiatives, preparing Louisiana residents for highly specialized jobs in film, television, and much more.
The funding has really helped with enrollment. The students love film, but they don't have access to New Orleans. They don't have easy access to Baton Rouge. Now we can do things in real time, in class. The output has been amazing.
There's no better way to learn how to make movies than actually making movies, and making movies in a setting that is as close to the professional realm as possible.
The funding from the EDF has enabled us to create a hands-on laboratory where the students can explore, experiment, and get practical training skills in real-world jobs, in not only the film industry, but the video game industry, and the broader entertainment world.
Film is tech-driven, and the technology is constantly advancing.
This does enable us to meet the workforce needs of the future. And a lot of those young people that are being trained right now in these new technologies are able to get jobs in Louisiana.
Being from the South and growing up in Louisiana, I always felt very lost of how to find a way into the film industry. But when I found the organization NOVAC, they helped give me the exposure to find a way into the film industry.
The instructors that we had are actual folks that work in the industry. We had actual gaffers, we had actual keepers, we had actual green gaffers.
This training gives them such an edge. When you graduate, you are ready to go out and take a job.
Nearly $5 million have been invested to date toward establishing and equipping skills development programs, like the XR Virtual Production Studio at Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge, the Digital Media Institute in Shreveport, the Cool Cooperative Video Access Center, and mic'd up music and film production programs in New Orleans, and the Visual FX program at the University of Louisiana Lafayette, to name just a few.
Because of this generous grant, we feel like we're on the cutting edge.
Not only are we on the cutting edge with where the entertainment industry is, but we are exploring what's going to come next. This will keep people in the state. This will keep people from going to California or New York or Georgia. The return on this investment is huge.
I would love to say thank you for recognizing us all the way down here by region.
Going up into all parts of the state, giving opportunities for people who would not ever think that a career in the entertainment industry is possible. That grant allows us to do that and get hands-on training to those people?
I'm doing all these different things that people told me that I couldn't do. I'm hearing the spice of my
The investments being made today through the Entertainment Development Fund ensure a world-class Louisiana talent pool for the future. That's sure to strike a chord with productions considering their next location, and with young creatives readying for blockbuster careers right here in their home state.
Alrighty. So, I just would like to say, if you want to learn more, I'm not sure if I can go to the next slide or not. Oh well. If you want to learn more, and we'd love for you to come and learn more, we have an award-winning new website, louisianaentertainment.gov, full of great info, full of cool clips, and I just want to say thanks for having me. This has been fun. I'm happy to take any questions if you have them. Yes, ma'am.
Could you describe in detail the incentives?
Oh, gosh. I feel like I'm at work. Okay. Sure. So it's a 25% tax credit across the board. If you will shoot in Louisiana, you got to have over $300,000 in certified spending to do that. There is for Baton Rouge and for anywhere outside of New Orleans an additional 5 if you will base your production outside of New Orleans. So essentially in Baton Rouge it's 30. There is an additional 10% if it's a Louisiana screenwriter who wrote the story, which is pretty cool. There's an additional 15% for all your local hires. So as long as they're a Louisiana resident, they can earn the production additional 15 on top of that 30 I just described. Now, there is a maximum amount of 40%. You can't go above 40. So you can stack with these things to get to 40. You just can't go beyond 40. But that's I mean, and again, there's a minimum. There are different caps per project and that kind of thing. So we don't give all our money to one project or 2 projects or something like that. So it's, they put a lot of thought into it.
What do those credits come to in dollar terms?
Oh, sure. Well, if you get a credit, you could, in theory, use it dollar for dollar against your own Louisiana income tax liability. If you don't have that much Louisiana income tax liability, you can actually sell it back to the state of Louisiana at a discount. And so that nets the production 88 cents on the dollar. Yes, sir.
Patrick, if you take a typical production, there's post-production, there's distribution, marketing, how many layers of that tax credit get applied to each layer? Meaning, is there an effort to try to keep all dollars spent in a production here with Louisiana vendors?
So the way the law is written right now, things like marketing, they call P&A, print and advertising costs. That's a big part of a budget. But a lot of that doesn't get spent. Yeah, a lot of that doesn't get spent in Louisiana. So it would be really hard for us to justify giving credits on ads that end up in the New York Times or on some Hulu or something like that. So we can't do that side of it. But when you're talking about the stuff that goes into prep for production, pre-production, production itself obviously, and post-production. And actually that's one of the huge best things about Louisiana, and that's why Crafty Apes is here, is that we will give you credits if you can do that much work on post only. Now most places will require you to both shoot and post in their state, not Louisiana. We will say it's okay if you can verify and prove that you actually spent all this money on post-production for visual effects, which is part of post-production. We'll give you a credit on that. Thank you, sir. Oh, all right.